The truth about Amazon agencies: overpromised and underdelivered. So today I want to talk about the elephant in the room, Amazon agencies. And I often find that I speak with many different brands, and when I say that we're an Amazon agency and I talk about what we do, there's hesitation there. And what we're starting to see, and I've been in the Amazon agency space since it started, so I've effectively been consulting since 2012 when Amazon agencies didn't even exist. And there's now an influx of agencies out there. And what it's meant is that there's, as always, some really great agencies and some not so great agencies. But what typically happens is many brands or businesses have a bad experience, and then those good companies are tarnished with the same brush. So effectively today I want to talk about what you should be thinking about when you're going to consider working with an Amazon agency, those red flags and those green flags, and what to expect. Because sometimes when things don't work out, it actually isn't anything to do with the Amazon agency, it's sometimes to do with the brand themselves. So let's dive into those different things that you need to be thinking about if you're considering working with an Amazon agency, or if you're actually have taken 10 steps back because you've had a bad experience or you don't believe that Amazon agencies are going to deliver what they say they're going to deliver. So why do agencies, and in specifically Amazon agencies, get a bad rap? Now, we need to think about Amazon itself. Amazon is complex and it's constantly evolving. So I could sit here and say, I know everything about Amazon, I know all the rules, the guidelines, etc. But Amazon could add a new feature, Amazon could change the guidelines tomorrow, and I need to make sure that I keep up with that. Sometimes we're not informed, sometimes we find out. So that's something that is outside the control of any agency, is how Amazon functions. So sometimes Amazon might do things and it has nothing to do with the agency, but because the agency is managing the account and working with Amazon, sometimes it's assumed that it's the fault of the agency. So that's one thing I want to highlight, is just sometimes there are things outside of our control as an agency that are down to Amazon. The other thing is there are agencies out there that overpromise, and they might say to you, right, we can get your business from 1 million to 5 million in 3 months, right? Already that raises a huge red flag to me. But there are agencies out there that are highlighting that they can do everything and don't always tell brands the truth, right? They just want to get you as a brand to sign up and work with them. And sometimes there are agencies that will do all of that just to get you to work with them. They're not necessarily looking for longevity. They just want you to sign with them from a short-term perspective. So that often happens. But not only that is it focusing on we could get you this crazy target. It might be that they say they can do these 100 things within this short span time frame, but the truth is they can't actually execute all of that. So that's often what happens. So we find then when we work with brands who have experienced something negative with another agency, they then challenge us. And so it's really important for us as an agency is that we're not overpromising, and we need to be really realistic, and you need to challenge brands when they want to see accelerated growth and be realistic about what they can achieve. So those are the key things often why brands get a bad rap. But you've got to think that with anything in life, right? You go to one restaurant, you have an incredible meal, incredible customer service. You go to another restaurant, you have a disgusting meal, or the customer service is just awful. But you don't assume that every single restaurant is bad. So it's really important that, yes, there are some agencies out there that aren't necessarily delivering what they say they deliver. But please, 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 by all means, don't let that tarnish your experience with other agencies, because there are some fantastic agencies out there that are delivering exceptional work. So why outsourcing still makes sense? So there are a lot of brands these days that now have in-house Amazon teams, partly because Amazon has just become such a beast for so many brands when selling on the platform. But it requires a huge amount of resource. Just assuming that one person can manage the whole of the Amazon account isn't going to happen these days, because you need expertise in so many different areas, from reporting and insights to marketing and ads management. There's so many different functions that sit under Amazon, and so it can be very resource heavy, and so that's where agencies step in, because they can take that off of a lot of brands' plates. But also there's the expertise as well, and that's what I mentioned. You're not going to find that one person, that one Amazon expert that knows and can execute absolutely every different lever on Amazon. There's different expertise that you need. And when you work with an agency is working with multiple brands across multiple categories. So they're getting insights in so many different areas throughout every single day. Whereas you as a brand are getting your insights just from what you know and what comes in for your brand. And so by tapping into that, you're not only tapping into that expertise, but that knowledge that they're learning. They're seeing what works on one product and trying it on another, or what works in one category could potentially work in another category. And so they can start benchmarking and really getting an idea of best practice. So that's something that's really important. And it's just remembering that if you are outsourcing, it's not about losing control of your brand. It's about just tapping into further expertise and knowledge that sometimes is very difficult to keep inside your business whilst Amazon continues to evolve. And, it's also sometimes a little bit of a case where people are looking to recruit an Amazon account manager. They're looking for a unicorn. So what makes a good Amazon agency? So first off, let's talk about the green flags. So what's the experience like? Typically, you're going to want to work with an agency that have ex-Amazon or ex-vendor or an ex-seller background. And I've mentioned the three because sometimes people assume that because somebody's got ex-Amazon experience that they'll know how to manage an account. It's not always the case, because it depends on what type of Amazon experience they have. So that's one thing. But also it might be an ex-vendor, and it could be that they've worked for multiple brands on managing Vendor Central, or they've been a seller working for a seller or their own seller. They have that experience of working on the other side. So that's one key green flag. Another green flag is when you're talking with brands, and this is what I spoke about earlier, is there isn't that hype, and there isn't saying that you can achieve X amount in this short space of time. Sometimes if they're saying that you can achieve these sales and you're like, wow, I never believed that, that's crazy. Probably is crazy, because they're probably trying to get you in the door to think that you can achieve something. And then there's that question around being overpromised. So if you're talking to a brand that challenges you on your numbers and that's giving you a more realistic number, for me, that's definitely a green flag. Also, case studies. So don't be afraid to ask an agency that you're working with for case studies, for examples. Now, many agencies will have case studies on their website or something within their portfolio or within their proposals. So make sure you go through those. But one thing that is key is don't get drawn in by the numbers when people say, oh, we grew X by 150%. But they haven't shown you the base number, because it's quite easy to say you've grown an account from 0 to 150% if that account was doing nothing, right? They're in the early stages of growth. Doing 150% as a increase when a brand or a product is very stable, that's incredible. So always think about when people are shouting out numbers that you look for the context as well. And that's something that's really important. So then if we're talking about red flags, so I already mentioned about if you're being forecasted that you can do these crazy numbers, always just make sure, does this sound too good to be true, right? So that's one thing. Also, just making sure that you're getting answers. Don't be afraid to ask questions. If those answers are very vague, they can't give you actual examples of, like, okay, you say we're going to get this target. How are we going to achieve that target? And if they're unable to give you the specifics, then it can sometimes be a bit off. So you really want to have a plan, a very clear roadmap, as in, okay, you say I'm going to do 5 million. Talk me through how we're going to achieve that 5 million. Another thing to look out for is long contracts, but with no accountability. And what I mean by that is all agencies will want to lock you into a contract. We do. It's really important for us because it helps us forecast resource to make sure we have the right people and the right teams on your account every month. But it's about accountability. So it goes back to what I was saying about that target. Okay, so you're going to be working with us. We're going to be working with you. How are we going to get to that 5 million target? What does that 12 or 24 month period look like? And getting a roadmap and some indication of what that period looks like. Because what you want to avoid is becoming part of a conveyor belt, or I always say part of a cookie cutter process, where it's just your accounts looked at month over month. You want to have a long-term view on how you're going to hit a certain target and how that agency is going to help you get there. Setting the right expectations. So it's really important to note that Amazon agencies aren't magicians and there is no magic formula or silver bullet. When you're working with an agency, it's a partnership. They're not an employee. They are to some degree an extension of your team, but it's all about working together in collaboration. And that comes in many different forms. If you want to grow your account and you've got an agency helping you do that, you need to provide them with all the assets. You need to be really responsive. So when they've created, for example, some amazing graphics and content, you're able to approve that within a short period of time. Because if you delay that and then turn around to the agency and say, well, we haven't been able to achieve X, well, that's probably because you haven't been able to approve everything and all the work that's been created to hit those results. So it is about working in partnership together, agreeing what those SLAs look like, and really making sure also that you're investing as much as the agency is investing in growing your brand. So from a point of budgets, when it comes to ads, all the way to the design and everything, it's two-way. You do want to expect steady progress. And what I mean by that is, it's not going and working with an agency and going, well, we expected X within 3 months, why haven't you delivered? And that's why it's also important, as I mentioned, the green flags, is having those conversations before you sign up with an agency. So then you're all clear, you're on the same page, you know what to expect because you've got a roadmap, you know what to expect because you've got a goal that you're both clear on. And so that's something that's really important as well. So it's just that steady progress, being clear, making sure that you're both on the same page, and just knowing that it's about working together in collaboration and understanding that there are certain things that the agency needs from you as a brand to move things along. And of course, there's a lot of things that you're going to need from the agency to be able to push the brand and hit that target that you've both agreed to. So why brands fail with agencies? So it goes back to what I said earlier about partnership, is sometimes brands look at agencies and believe that they're an employee, and they start throwing tasks at them and expecting them to do all these different administrative tasks that actually aren't part of the scope of work. And so what ends up is the agency end up doing these tasks to almost support the brand and to help build that relationship. But then they get distracted because they're focusing on all these administrative parts and not able to focus on the key things that are really gonna basically move the brand forward. And often what happens is, you start working with a brand, you're all excited, you've been clear in terms of what the brand needs to provide you, but then you get started and the brand doesn't necessarily, takes time to give you the assets, to let you know all the product detail, to give you the images of the products, etc. And so then what happens is it creates this delay. And so you then become, as an agency, your hands are tied. And so that's often then where brands fail, if they're not able to give you everything that you need to be able to do your job. So I always say to brands, just make sure before you agree on that start date that you have sufficient time to be able to get everything together. Now, another thing to call out is you pay for what you get. And sometimes there are brands out there looking for an agency on a budget. And I heard this expression the other day, which is you can't have champagne on a lemonade budget. And it's exactly that. Like, you can't expect a premium service if you're not going to pay for it. And so it is always, you pay for what you get. So sometimes, yes, you're going to have, some brands have limited budget, but just be careful in terms of what you're agreeing and expecting, because sometimes, and this comes back to why I said at the start, as in, if you go to a brand and they're saying they're going to deliver everything for you, but it's hardly going to cost you anything, be wary, because that comes to that whole thing where a brand is over-promising but potentially going to under-deliver, because they're not going to be able to afford to deliver everything that they say they're going to do. So if you think that something is a bit too good to be true, often that is the case. So just be wary. So the truth about Amazon agencies, yes, there are some agencies out there that overpromise. There are some agencies out there that underdeliver. There are also some agencies out there that deliver on what they promise they're going to do. And so it's really important to go through what I mentioned about looking out for those green flags, looking out for the red flags, and being very clear on your expectations and making sure that you are aligned when you're going in and working with an agency. Now, of course, many of you listening to this thinking, oh, well, she's the founder and CEO of an Amazon agency, she's going to be biased. Yes, there will be some degree where I am biased, but at the same time, I've been in this space for over 20 years. I've seen good agencies, I've seen bad agencies, and as I said, I've seen agencies evolve from Amazon agencies not even existing in this space. And there are some fantastic agencies out there. And it's also, there is no one size fits all. There are going to be some agencies that are going to be brilliant for some kind of sellers, some agencies that are going to be brilliant for some kind of product categories. And so it's really important, as I mentioned at the start, is not to generalize agencies and just to really think about what is it that you want from an agency, why are you looking to outsource, and then making sure that you find the right partner. So if you're sitting there thinking, okay, well, eCommerce Nurse, is that really the agency that can promise what they are saying they're going to deliver? Absolutely. We are completely transparent. We'll tell you what we think. And if you believe that you're going to hit X number and we don't think you're going to hit that, we'll be completely honest with you, because it's really important for us. Yes, we want you to drive results, but it's really important that we're realistic in terms of what you can achieve. So if you want to know more about how we can support you, reach out to us at ecommercenurse.com and we would love to have a conversation with you and talk Amazon.